John 13, starting in verse 1. Now, before the feast of Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During the supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God, was going back to God. Rose from supper, he laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said, Lord, do you wash my feet? Jesus answered him, What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand. Peter said to him, You shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered him, If I do not wash you, you have no share with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. And Jesus said to him, The one who is bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not every one of you. For he knew who was to betray him. And that is why he said, Not all of you are clean. And when he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should also do just as I have done to you. This is a great story for us to look at as an example and a direct command from Jesus to serve one another. And at a time when we're told in Luke 22, I'm not sure of the events and how everything happened that evening, but we know that evening that at some point the disciples are arguing among themselves, so who's the greatest out of all of us? And Jesus, their Lord and their teacher, shows them such humility, such servanthood to lean down and to serve them in this lowly job of washing their feet. And think about some of the things Jesus had on his mind this evening. As we just talked about, his friends, his apostles, they're arguing among themselves at this some point during the evening. We know that Judas's betrayal is coming up, and Jesus knows about it. He foretells Peter that he's going to deny him. And all this is kind of under the umbrella of this building stress of knowing that his death is coming soon. He had a lot weighing on him that night. And when you think about us in our minds, some of us have been through some times when we've felt some heavy stresses to us. Um, some of us have been through some serious illnesses, surgeries, emotional struggles, financial problems. Some of us had fallouts with family members, death of a loved one. Maybe you've had family or friends that have turned from the Lord. Uh, some of us have been through these things. Some of us are still going through things probably like this right now. And the weight of the stresses gets so heavy on us that sometimes, if you're like me, all you want to do is shrink back and watch TV or do something mindless just to get away from it all, just to stop thinking about it. But that's not what Jesus did. Actually, a side note, following John the Baptist's death, Jesus did try and get away to mourn for a bit, but the crowds followed him. They wouldn't leave him alone. And when he saw that, he had compassion for them and went out to him. He knew he had a job to do. And that in itself may be a good example for us that a short break is a good thing at times, but retiring from serving that's not what we're supposed to be doing. But back to what we're talking about. Despite the mounting stress that he's of his death that's coming up and the shortcomings of his followers from time to time, he didn't shrink back. He forged ahead. He knew he had a job to do. He knew he had to prepare and encourage his disciples uh, to the very end of his time on earth. And we see also in Peter later, he followed that same example as his death was drawing near. He tells his readers that he'll make every effort so that after he's gone, they're going to be able to remember, be able to recall his teachings. And what an example this is for me to look at when my burden seems so heavy, when I feel like, man, I just don't have time. I cannot even think about serving right now. I've got too much weighing down on me that I still have a job to do. I still have a job to serve those around me. I still have a job to serve you guys. And also think about who Jesus served. Think about what Jesus was trying to prepare the apostles for. We know about some of the conditions, some of the circumstances that follow these guys after Jesus' death, and how they'd need to humble themselves enough to teach salvation to these people, teach salvation to the people who are going to mock them, to the people who are going to oppose their message and fight against them, the people that are going to be beating them and threatening their lives, and to some of those that were going to lead them to torturous deaths. They had to humble themselves enough to teach those people. Our goal is to bring glory to God and to bring others to Him. And we do that by the way that we serve one another. We do that by the way we serve those outside of Christ's body.